Something almost went wrong today, but it didn't. Because someone caught it at the last minute. They noticed what others missed. They stepped in. They fixed it. And just like that, the day was saved. Everyone says, "Good catch, well done." Because once again, the system worked. Or did it? Because when safety depends on someone stepping in at the last moment, it's not strength, it's exposure. This is the hero trap, and it shows up in more places than we admit. Last episode, we talked about when expertise goes unchallenged. Today, we go one step further. What happens when safety depends on individuals instead of systems? This is the safety edge. Welcome back to the Safety Edge podcast, where safety leaders sharpen their edge. I'm Charles Edgar, your safety leadership coach. In this podcast, we explore the real dilemmas safety leaders face on site and in the workplace. Not textbook examples, not perfect scenarios, but the challenging, uncomfortable human moments when there is no obvious right answer and the pressure is real. And in each episode, we unpack one real-world leadership dilemma and explore how adopting a coaching mindset can make the difference. Not by controlling people, but by sharpening how we think, listen, and lead. We admire competence. We respect people who step in and make things right. In high-risk environments, we often rely on them. The experienced operator, the vigilant supervisor, the one who always catches it. And over time, they become the safety net. And here's the tension. The more we rely on individuals to compensate, the less we strengthen the system. Because every time someone saves the day, something deeper may be going unaddressed. A weak process, an unclear standard, a gap in communication. But instead of fixing the system, we celebrate the individual. And gradually, heroic effort becomes expected, not exceptional, but necessary. And that's where risk begins to grow silently in the background. Picture this. You are on site. A task is on the way. It's routine, familiar, but something isn't quite right. A parameter is slightly off. A step was rushed. A check was skipped. No one stops. The job continues. Then suddenly, someone steps in. Hold on. They pause the job. They point out the gap. They correct it. The team adjusts. The task is completed safely. Later, people say, "Good thing he was there." And they are right. But here's what no one asks. What if he wasn't? What would have happened then? Because what you just witnessed was not a strong system, it was a near miss, intercepted by a person. And over time, a question begins to form quietly. Are we safe? Or are we just getting lucky? And in that moment, you begin to realize this isn't certainty, it's exposure. Now you hesitate, unsure what to do. Do you move on like the others? Or do you speak up and take the uncomfortable steps to close the system gap? But you pause, wondering how they'll see you. Will they value your input? Or see you as someone who always raises issues where none exist? And in that moment, you're not sure what to do. Now you are in a dilemma. Why is this a leadership dilemma? This is a leadership dilemma because heroics looks like strength. You see ownership, commitment, responsibility. But beneath that, there's dependency, and that creates tension. Do you celebrate the individual or question the system? Because if you only celebrate it, you reinforce it. But if you question it, you begin to see the gaps. And here's the reality. Without strong systems, safety becomes unpredictable. Now, what do most leaders do in these situations? They recognize the individual. They say, good job, excellent awareness, and they move on. Sometimes they even rely on it. I know he'll catch it. Or they even normalize it. That's why we have experienced people. But here's the problem with this approach. People should not be relied upon as active control measures, because even the best people get tired, get distracted, and sometimes outrightly miss things. And when they do, the flawed system will have nothing to fall back on. Now let's see what effective leaders do differently. Effective leaders don't ignore heroics, but they don't just stop at recognition. They go deeper. First, they ask, what in the system allowed this to be missed? Shifting the focus from the person to the process. Second, they design for consistency. So safety does not depend on memory or experience. 3, they remove single point dependencies, so no one person becomes the last line of defense. 4, they standardize critical safety checks, making them visible, repeatable, and reliable. 5th, they reframe success from someone caught it to the system prevented it. Because the goal is not to reduce ownership, it is to reduce reliance on individual rescue. Now let's take that mindset into the field and see it from a coaching lens. You observe a conversation between a supervisor and operators in the plant after what appears to be a near miss. The supervisor says,
"We almost missed a step in the isolation procedure earlier, but Ahmed caught it just before we proceeded."
A team member responded,
"Yeah, that was close. Good thing he noticed."
And at this stage, you calmly say, let's pause for a moment. If Ahmed wasn't here today, what would have happened? One of the operators responded,
we probably would have continued with the task ahead.
And what does that tell us about the process? The second operator says,
this checklist is off. It doesn't match what we actually do out here.
good. Where in the process should that risk have been caught?
During the last verification step, just before execution.
So, what are we relying on right now?
To be honest, we have been relying on experience, not the system.
Exactly. So how do we redesign this so the system catches it every time?
We could add a mandatory cross-check before sign-off.
And make it visible on the checklist, not assumed.
Good. Now let's build that in before the next task. Now, this wasn't about diminishing Ahmed's contribution. It was about exposing the system gap, not because someone failed, but because the system relied on someone succeeding. And that shift changes everything. Now let's go over the key takeaways from this episode. Heroic effort is valuable, but it's not a control measure. When people compensate for weak systems, risk becomes hidden. Consistency, not brilliance, is what sustains safety. Strong systems are designed to reduce dependency on individuals. Leadership is not about finding heroes. It's about building systems that don't need them. Because the goal is not just to respond to failure, it is to design it out. And in that space, safety stops being reactive and starts becoming reliable. The point where effort meets structure, where vigilance is supported by design, where success is not dramatic but predictable. And in that moment, when you see the gap and choose to strengthen the system instead of depending on individuals, that is the moment when the system works without needing to be saved. That moment, that choice, that is the edge. Today, we explore the tension between individual efforts and system strength. We established that people are critical, but where safety depends on them alone, it becomes fragile. So the next time someone saves the day, don't stop at recognition. Pause. Ask, what allowed this to happen? What would have happened if they weren't there? Because that moment of reflection might reveal a system gap that, if addressed, would prevent a future incident. If this episode resonates with you, share it with your team. And in your next discussion, ask, where are we relying on individuals instead of systems? What are we leaving to chance? Because when safety depends on heroes, the system becomes vulnerable. And in that space, we risk confusing recovery with reliability, making it harder to see where true improvement is needed. While here, make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to invite a friend or colleague to listen along with you. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Safety Edge podcast. I'm Charles Edgar, your safety leadership coach. And until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep sharpening your edge. Bye for now.
Brought to you by the Safety Edge platform, an independent leadership and safety learning platform, building leadership capacity, one conversation at a time. Find us wherever you get your podcasts